Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the frigid air, Porter discerned a peculiarity on his lips, an unfamiliar sensation beyond the typical winter aridity. A saccharine, fruity fragrance assaulted his senses, unlike the customary petroleum smell. An ephemeral realization dawned on him as he scrutinized the item in his grip. It was Melissa's lip gloss, a vibrant tint of pink, not his conventional chapstick. He swore softly, poised to remove it from his lips, chagrined at his unintentional exchange of personal hygiene items. But his reflection caught his attention. The subtle shine made his lips look fuller, somehow more defined. Porter leaned closer to the mirror, turning his head slightly. He pressed his lips together, fascinated by how such a small change altered his entire appearance. A door slammed downstairs, making him jump. "Porter, you home?" Melissa's voice carried up the stairs. "Yeah, just a sec." He hastily wiped the gloss off with a tissue, tossed the tube back into her makeup bag, and grabbed his actual chapstick from the medicine cabinet. That night, lying in bed, Porter couldn't stop thinking about that brief moment. How different he had looked. How different he had felt. 3 days later, home alone on a Saturday afternoon, Porter found himself standing outside Melissa's bedroom door. She wouldn't be back for hours, some college study group that always ran long. His hand hesitated on the doorknob. This was ridiculous. But curiosity won out, and he pushed the door open. Melissa's makeup bag sat on her dresser, a disorganized collection of products spilling from its unzipped top. Porter approached slowly, feeling like an intruder in a museum. He picked up the strawberry lip gloss, turning it over in his hands. Before he could talk himself out of it, he uncapped it and applied a layer to his lips, just as he had accidentally done days before. The bathroom mirror revealed the same subtle transformation. But this time, with no one to interrupt, Porter allowed himself to study his reflection more carefully. His masculine features somehow softened with just that simple addition. Emboldened, he reached back into the makeup bag and pulled out a tube of mascara. He'd watched Melissa apply it hundreds of times over the years. How hard could it be? The answer was very hard. His first attempt left black smudges under his eye. After cleaning up with a tissue, he tried again, more carefully this time. The result wasn't perfect, but his eyelashes suddenly seemed longer, more prominent. Porter stepped back from the mirror, heart racing. The person staring back at him wasn't quite himself, but wasn't quite a stranger either. It was freeing, like discovering a room in your house you never knew existed. He carefully removed all traces of makeup before Melissa returned, but the memory lingered long after. These secret sessions continued for weeks. Porter became more adventurous, experimenting with blush, eyeshadow, and eventually eyeliner. His technique improved with each attempt, guided by YouTube tutorials watched in private browsing mode. On a particularly bold day, after applying a full face of makeup, Porter opened Melissa's closet. His sister was taller than him, but they had similar builds. His eyes fell on a teal wrap dress hanging near the front. Without allowing himself to overthink, he slipped it from its hanger. The fabric felt cool against his skin as he pulled it on. The wrap style accommodated his broader shoulders surprisingly well. A white cardigan from another hanger completed the outfit. Porter turned to the full-length mirror on Melissa's door and froze. The person staring back wasn't Porter at all. This was someone else entirely. Someone with softer edges, gentler features. Someone who looked right.
Holy shit,
he whispered, running his hands down the sides of the dress, feeling how it draped over his body. A car door slammed outside. Porter's head snapped toward the window. Melissa was home early. Panic seized him as he rushed to change back into his clothes, frantically wiping off makeup, heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. He just managed to slip out of her room before Melissa reached the top of the stairs. "Hey," she said, raising an eyebrow at his flushed face. "You okay? You look weird."
"Fine,"
Porter replied, voice higher than normal. He cleared his throat. "Just, looking for that book you borrowed." She seemed suspicious, but shrugged it off. "On my desk." That night, Porter couldn't sleep. The image of himself, or rather that other self, haunted him. It wasn't just about the clothes or makeup. It was about the person he glimpsed in those brief moments. Someone who had been hidden inside him all along. Over the next few months, Porter's excursions into Melissa's room became more frequent and methodical. He learned which items she rarely wore, which makeup products she had duplicates of. He started saving money from his IT support job, though he wasn't yet brave enough to buy anything for himself. During one of these sessions, as Porter admired the way a flowing skirt moved around his legs, the name came to him suddenly and completely. Elowyn. Not that he needed a different name, he told himself. This was just exploring, just curiosity. But deep down, something was shifting, like tectonic plates rearranging themselves beneath the surface of his identity. The breaking point came when Melissa walked in on him. Porter had become complacent, thinking she would be gone all evening, but her date had ended early, and she returned to find him standing in her room wearing her teal wrap dress, fully made up, blonde hair pushed back with one of her headbands. "What the fuck?" Melissa stood frozen in the doorway. Porter couldn't speak, couldn't move. Shame and terror paralyzed him completely. But Melissa's shock quickly transformed into something else. She closed the door behind her and approached slowly, like she might spook a wild animal. "How long?" she asked softly. Porter's mouth opened and closed. Sit down," she said, gesturing to her bed. "Let's talk." The conversation that followed was the hardest of Porter's life. Words he'd never spoken aloud tumbled out, feelings he'd barely acknowledged even to himself. Melissa listened without interruption, her initial surprise giving way to understanding. "So, do you think you're transgender?" she finally asked when he fell silent. Porter stared at his hands.
"I don't know. Maybe. I just know that when I'm like this, I feel more myself than I ever have."
Melissa nodded slowly. "You know what? That teal dress always looked better on you anyway." She smiled, and something tight in Porter's chest loosened for the first time in years. With Melissa's support, Porter began exploring his identity more openly, at least within the safety of their apartment. She helped him select his own clothes, taught him makeup techniques, and, most importantly, provided a judgment-free space to figure things out. 6 months later, Porter sat at their kitchen table, a mug of coffee cooling between his hands. He wore jeans and a plain gray t-shirt, but his nails were painted a subtle pink.
"I've been thinking,"
he said to Melissa, who was scrolling through her phone across from him. She looked up. "Dangerous habit." "I want to go by Elowyn, at least at home for now." Melissa put her phone down. "Elowyn, I like it. It suits you. And I think I think I am transgender. I want to transition. Fully." The words hung in the air for a moment before Melissa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Then that's what we'll do. One step at a time." Those steps began small. Elowen started hormone therapy after consultations with doctors. She grew out her natural blonde hair, which had always been on the longer side for a man anyway. She practiced her voice, developed her own style, and slowly began living as herself at home full-time. The first time she went outside as Elowen rather than Porter was terrifying. Just to the corner store, wearing the teal wrap dress that had become something of a talisman, paired with the white cardigan and subtle makeup. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone must hear it. But the elderly cashier just smiled and called her Miss without a second glance, and Elowen nearly cried from relief right there between the potato chips and the candy bars. Work was a bigger challenge. Elowen had been with the same IT company for 3 years as Porter. Coming out meant potential rejection, discrimination, even harassment, but living a double life was becoming increasingly painful. She scheduled a meeting with her supervisor, Hannah, a direct woman in her 50s, who had always been fair, if not particularly warm. "So," Hannah said, after Elowen had stammered through her practiced speech, "you're telling me that from now on, you'll be coming to work as Elowen, not Porter." "Yes. I've already started the legal process to change my name, but that takes time." Hannah nodded, tapping her pen against her desk calendar. "Our HR policies support this. We'll need to update your email, security badge, and so on." She looked up, meeting Elowen's eyes directly. "Is there anything specific you need from me to make this transition smoother at work?" The matter-of-fact response nearly undid Elowen completely. She had prepared for resistance, for awkward questions, for thinly veiled disapproval. Hannah's straightforward acceptance left her momentarily speechless. "Just maybe helping correct people if they use the wrong name or pronouns?" she finally managed. "Consider it done. Now, about the Hendricks project." And just like that, the professional part of Elowen's life began its transformation as well. Not everything was so easy. Elowen's father, a stoic man of few words, struggled with the change.
"I don't understand it,"
he said during a tense family dinner.
"But you're my child. That doesn't change."
It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was enough to build on. 1 year into her transition, Elowen barely resembled the person she had been. Hormone therapy had softened her features and redistributed her body fat. Her blonde hair now fell past her shoulders in gentle waves. She had developed a signature style, flowing skirts, feminine tops, and always a carefully chosen lip gloss. That had become something of an obsession. Where it all began with the strawberry lip gloss, Elowen now maintained an extensive collection. She carried at least 3 different shades in her purse at all times, coordinated to match whatever outfit she wore that day. "You have a problem," Melissa teased, watching Elowen deliberate between coral and peach shades before a night out. "It's not a problem. It's a passion," Elowen replied, finally selecting the coral. She applied it carefully, blotted her lips on a tissue, and stepped back to assess the full effect. Her outfit for the evening was a cream-colored blouse with a lavender skirt that swirled around her calves. Modest gold jewelry and natural makeup completed the look. Gone were the days of borrowing Melissa's clothes. Everything Elowen wore now was selected specifically for her own body and style. "Ready?" Melissa asked, grabbing her purse. They were meeting friends for dinner, a mix of Melissa's longtime social circle and new friends Elowen had made through support groups, people who had only ever known her as Elowen. The restaurant was buzzing when they arrived. Their group occupied a large table near the back, and several people waved as they approached. Elowyn recognized most faces, but one man at the far end was unfamiliar, tall with dark hair and glasses, laughing at something someone had said. Melissa noticed her looking. "That's Roman. He works with Claire at the architecture firm. Single, from what I hear," she added, with a nudge to Elowyn's ribs.
"Stop it,"
Elowyn muttered, but she felt a flutter of interest. Dating as a transgender woman was complicated territory she had mostly avoided so far. Dinner was lively, conversation flowing as easily as the wine. Elowyn found herself seated across from Roman, who turned out to be not just handsome, but genuinely interesting, passionate about historic building preservation and terrible at cooking, by his own admission.
"So, how do you survive?"
Elowyn asked, taking a sip of her wine.
"Takeout and the mercy of friends who invite me to dinner,"
he replied with a self-deprecating smile.
"And you? Culinary genius or fellow disaster?"
"Somewhere in between. I make an excellent pasta and can follow a recipe without burning down the kitchen, but that's about it. Still impressive from where I'm standing." Their conversation continued throughout dinner, veering from food to books to travel dreams. Roman was easy to talk to, attentive without being intense. By dessert, Elowyn realized she hadn't thought about being trans once during their interaction, a rare and liberating experience. As the group dispersed after dinner, Roman approached Elowyn while she was putting on her light jacket.
"I enjoyed talking with you tonight,"
he said. "Me too." Elowyn smiled, noting how her coral lip gloss had mostly worn off during dinner. "Would you maybe want to continue the conversation sometime? Coffee or dinner, perhaps?" The question hung in the air, and with it, all the complications Elowyn had been avoiding. Did he know she was transgender? Should she tell him now? Later? What if his interest disappeared once he knew? But looking at his open, expectant expression, Elowyn made a decision. She deserved this chance. "I'd like that," she said. "Coffee sounds perfect." They exchanged numbers, and Elowyn walked home with Melissa, a mix of excitement and anxiety churning in her stomach. "So," Melissa said, linking arms with her, "you and Roman seem to hit it off." "We're getting coffee. It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal! It's your first real date since you transitioned." Elowyn sighed. "That's what makes it complicated. He doesn't know I'm trans." "How do you know?" "I just assume he doesn't. And I need to tell him before anything happens. But what if he reacts badly? What if he—" "Hey," Melissa interrupted, stopping on the sidewalk to face her sister. "First of all, he might already know. Claire knows, and they work together. Second, if he has a problem with it, that's his loss. You are a fantastic, beautiful woman who any person would be lucky to date." Elowyn gave a watery smile. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been the smart one. You were just too busy stealing my makeup to notice." They continued walking, and Elowyn tried to focus on the positive possibilities rather than the potential pitfalls. Coffee with Roman was scheduled for the following Saturday. Elowyn spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear, finally settling on a casual but flattering outfit. Dark jeans, a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes, and comfortable ankle boots. Her makeup was subtle, foundation, mascara, a touch of blush, and she selected a neutral lip gloss that added shine without being too noticeable. The coffee shop was busy but not overcrowded. Roman was already at a table by the window, and he stood when he saw her approach.
"You look nice,"
he said, as she sat down.
"I already ordered my coffee, but I waited for you to get yours."
"I'll just be a minute then." At the counter, Elowyn ordered a latte, her mind racing. Today was the day she would tell him. Before things went any further, he deserved to know, and she deserved someone who accepted her completely. Returning to the table with her drink, Elowyn took a deep breath.
Roman, before we really get started, there's something I should tell you.
His expression turned curious. That sounds ominous. It's not. Well, I hope not. It's just something about me that you should know. She wrapped her hands around her warm mug. I'm transgender. I transitioned about a year ago. Roman's expression didn't change dramatically. No shock or disgust, just a slight raise of his eyebrows. Okay. Elowyn waited for more, but he just took a sip of his coffee.
That's it? Just okay?
He set his mug down.
I mean, what would you like me to say? Thank you for telling me.
Most people have more of a reaction. I already knew, Elowyn. It was her turn to be surprised. You did? Claire mentioned it when she was telling me about who would be at dinner. I hope that's okay. She wasn't gossiping. She just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to be weird about it.
And you're not weird about it?
Roman smiled gently.
No, I'm not weird about it. You're a woman I found interesting and attractive at dinner, and I wanted to get to know you better. That hasn't changed.
Relief washed over Elowyn like a warm wave. She hadn't realized how tense she had been until that tension released. Well, that was a lot easier than I expected. Sorry to disappoint with my lack of drama. She laughed. Trust me, no disappointment here. The rest of their coffee date flowed naturally. Roman asked thoughtful questions about her experience without making her transition the focal point of their conversation. They discovered a shared love of old detective novels and an equally shared hatred of reality TV shows.
This was nice,
Roman said, as they stood outside the coffee shop afterward.
Would you want to do dinner next weekend? I promise not to cook it myself.
I'd like that, Elowyn replied, feeling lighter than she had in months. As their relationship developed over the following weeks, Elowyn found herself falling into a rhythm she hadn't experienced before. Roman was attentive but never pushy, interested in her journey, but never treating her like an educational opportunity. They went to movies, tried new restaurants, took long walks in the park, talking about everything and nothing. Physical intimacy developed gradually. Their first kiss happened on their third date, outside her apartment door. Gentle, questioning, and then more confident when she responded. Elowyn had worried about this aspect of dating, but Roman's approach was so natural that her anxiety melted away. I don't know what I did to deserve you, she said one evening as they sat on her couch, her head on his shoulder while a forgotten movie played in the background.
You're just you,
he replied, kissing the top of her head.
That's more than enough.
6 months into their relationship, Elowyn realized she'd stopped thinking of herself as Porter in transition and simply lived as Elowyn. The last remnants of her former self had faded away, replaced by a woman who was confident in her identity and future. That future now seemed full of possibilities that once appeared impossible. A fulfilling career. She had been promoted to team lead at her IT company. A loving relationship with Roman, who had recently given her a key to his apartment. A supportive family, including her father, who now proudly introduced her as my daughter, Elowyn. And always, a perfectly coordinated outfit, complete with the perfect shade of lip gloss. On the anniversary of her first day living publicly as Elowyn, Melissa organized a small celebration at their apartment. Friends and family gathered to commemorate not just Elowyn's transition, but her journey to becoming fully herself. Speech! someone called out as dessert was being served. Elowyn shook her head, but everyone insisted. Standing, she looked around at the faces of people who had supported her, accepted her, loved her through every step. "A year ago, I was terrified," she began. "I thought living authentically meant losing everything: family, friends, respect, opportunity. I couldn't have been more wrong." She smiled at Melissa, then at Roman, who watched her with pride. "Instead, I found myself. And in finding myself, I found a better version of all those things I was afraid to lose." She touched her lips, adorned with the strawberry lip gloss that had started everything. A special choice for this significant day. Sometimes the smallest things can lead to the biggest changes. All it took was the wrong tube of lip balm and the courage to follow where that led me. She raised her glass. To authenticity, to support, and to finding yourself even when you didn't know you were lost. As glasses clinked and conversations resumed, Elowyn felt Roman's arm slip around her waist. "Happy anniversary," he murmured. "You're incredible. You know that?" She leaned into him, content in a way she once thought impossible. "I'm just me." "Exactly," he said, kissing her temple. "That's what makes you incredible." Later that night, after guests had departed and Melissa had gone to bed, Elowyn stood in front of her bedroom mirror. She'd come so far from those secret moments in Melissa's bathroom, experimenting with stolen makeup and borrowed clothes. Her reflection now showed a confident woman with long blonde hair, wearing a flowing skirt and feminine top that belonged entirely to her. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more living as someone she wasn't. Elowyn smiled at herself, wiped away a smudge of strawberry lip gloss, and turned away from the mirror. Tomorrow was waiting, and for the first time in her life, she was completely ready to meet it as her true self.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!